Good afternoon and welcome to the Sunshine Coast Regional District Regular Board Meeting of Thursday, October 13th. And I'd like to welcome everyone here. We actually have people in the gallery. And I'd like to acknowledge that we're within the territory of the Shishalt and Squamish Nations. So we have an agenda in front of us, including the number 4 report on the drought response update. So I'd look for a motion to receive or adopt the agenda as presented. Moved and seconded. Sorry. Go ahead, Director Pratt.
I'd also like to add the letter from the Half Moon Bay Community Association as an item of correspondence, please, as it does pertain to one of our reports.
Okay, do you have that handy that you could email to all the directors?
It was shared at least twice with the directors, but I will forward it as well again now.
Just so it's top of our email and we can access it quickly.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, just one moment, and I will make sure that it is forwarded to everybody again now.
All right, any other items of new business or additions? All right, so I'd look for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. So first up, we have the regular board meeting minutes of September 22nd. Any errors or omissions in these minutes? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion to adopt as presented. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, I would look for a motion to receive all the reports, including the verbal one we'll be getting shortly, and the drought response one that was included, and the correspondence. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. All right, we'll turn it over to our Director of Infrastructure, Remco Rosenboom. Sorry, General Manager of Infrastructure Services, GM Rosenboom, for a water supply update.
Thank you very much, Chair. Usually I say I'm pleased to provide you today with a water supply update, and this time around, I'll turn on my camera. And this time around, I'm not saying that I'm pleased because I was hoping to provide today with an evaluation of our drought response from this year. But I will definitely provide you with a water supply update presentation today. I will share my screen. Okay. So today's presentation will provide a regular water supply update presentation and at the same time an overview of the activities of the Emergency Operations Center that's currently are underway. So the current conditions, we've experienced about 100 days of dry conditions on the coast. Hasn't rained significantly since early June. We currently have 2 emergency water supply systems activated for the Chapman water system, one at Chapman Lake and one at Edwards Lake. Staff are working around the clock to maintain water to provide services to homes and businesses. When you see some water staff operational or here in the office walking around with a little bit tired faces over a cup of coffee in the hand, that's why. And it's clear status quo is not good enough. The SCD is continuing to ask all home businesses and industry to reduce their water use. And I will explain further in presentation why. So last week, the province upgraded the drought conditions for our region to level 5, which is their extreme level. This indicates that all the watersheds in our region are extremely dry. And we are at the level 5, and the west coast of Vancouver Island is at level 5 as well. And it's definitely not common for the province to issue level 5 drought conditions. So this is really an indication of that the entire area is dry. It's not only the Chapman watershed. As I indicated before, we are approaching 100 days of dry conditions on the coast, and I think this graph tells the story about or provides an overview of how much rain we usually get during the months of July, August, and September combined, and how much we've been receiving so far this year. And as you can see, In last several years, it was between 125 and 225 millimeters, and this year we're about 30. And so it's really, this is, I think, the biggest driver for the situation we're currently in, combined with higher than normal temperatures. So as you can see here, this is the graph. I've not used it, shown it before this year, but I've did it last year. Is the line indicates the average temperature on every day here in Seychelles, and the blue bars are indicating the water use. And what you can see is that July was a warm month and August was an even warmer month. August was a month where we had several heat waves back to back. And you can also see that September still had days far above, on average, towards the 20 degrees, which is definitely above normal. You can see that from late August, mid-August onwards, you see a disconnect between temperature and water use. And up until then, temperature goes up, water use goes up. Temperatures go down, water use goes down. We analyzed it a little bit more, and long weekends are not identifiable in the sense of that you see a spike because of tourists on the coast. It's primarily connection with temperature that is driving water use. What is the forecast looking like? This was the forecast from Environment Canada for the next month as of October 10th. The darker red it is, the higher certainty it is that it is above normal. And unfortunately, our area is as red can be. So we're definitely not out of the woods yet. The weather forecast for the upcoming months is warmer than normal. Warmer than normal usually aligns with drier than normal. The 3 months forecast is a little bit weaker. But it's definitely not, but it still indicates that there is a chance of warmer than normal temperature. So, for sure, for the next 10 days, there is no rain, no significant amount of rain in the forecast. There is a little bit, next weekend, there's a 40 to 60% chance of 10 to 50 mil, but that's still in a week and a half away from now. And it all depends on if that indeed, if we indeed get the rain, what next steps will be. But the Environment Canada indicated that there could be some changing in weather happening then that would at least result in lower temperatures than we currently are seeing on the coast. And we're frequently in contact with Environment Canada to get specific updates for our region. So how are we currently maintaining water supply to the community? We're diverting water through our regular valve in our dam since August 24th. We are receiving water from the town of Gibson through the emergency water supply agreement since September 28th. We have our siphon system at Chapman Lake operating since August 31st, and we installed the siphon system at Edwards October 22nd to 6th, early last week, and it's currently in full operations. And the graph here just gives a very simplified functioning of a siphon system. The black line is our dam. The arrow through the dam is our regular valve. When the water level on the left side, which is the dam side, is lower than our outlet level, we use a siphon to get the water over the dam into the creek on the other side. That's what a siphon does. So once a siphon is primed and operating, it doesn't require, it's just a suction, it's just gravity physics. And there's no pumps anymore required, it's silent. Only when you put your hand actually on the pipe, you can actually feel water running through the pipe. Otherwise, there's no notice of water running anywhere. So we're currently providing water, about 2/3 is coming from Chapman Lake and Edwards Lake. About Gray Creek is still providing about 17%. Town of Gibson's used to be 3 to 4%, but due to collaborative efforts between town staff and SRD staff, since last weekend, we were able to up that to about 10%, which is a huge increase. Thank you for Town of Gibson staff for making that happen. And Chesterwell is providing us with about 7% of the water. Gray Creek, you might remember, is a surface water source, where we have not sufficient treatment to treat water that's not already very clear. So if there is a rain event, the water will most likely get turbid, and that would require us to take Gray Creek offline. But anyway, we expect that we currently have enough water until early November. When exactly in early November, that in part depends on if Gray Creek, if and when Gray Creek might need to be taken offline. And of course, the water use in the community. The graph presented here is the graph until yesterday. And you can really see that the community demand has dropped from, it was between 10 and 11 million liters a day, and it's currently hovering around 9.5 million liters a day, which is great to see. Further reduction is definitely an option, and I think it is also possible, and I will come to why a little bit later. This is Chapman Lake last Friday. This is I'm standing in the creek bed, and I'm actually looking towards the dam. And if you were able to see my cursor, this, you can hardly see it on the screens here in the room, is the normal outlet structure. And this is a person. So I'm standing currently at minus 4.8, I think it was at the time, below the crest of the dam, and I think it's even lower at the moment. Meters. This is the creek bed, the lake bed shore, also last Friday. And here you can see the siphons. They're all going, these are the buoys above their fish screens. The fish screens are currently located at the bottom. So it could be that they start pulling in sediments and silts very shortly, which we don't want to happen, but we'll see. And the picture on the right, usually the water levels to the top of that rock that is there on the left. It's there, and I'm not going to, this is a person sitting here on the lakeshore. So this gives you an indication of how low the water level actually is. You won't recognize him, but this is our manager capital project, Steve Mizurek. Edwards Lake. This is from the lake looking towards the dam. Here you can clearly see how the outlet was constructed in the 90s. When there was rock taken away out of the shore to create an outlet, and then there was a dam installed. So there is a little channel. This was 2 days ago, or yesterday, I already got, but last several days. So there's still a little bit of water in the channel. So we currently are releasing water through our valve that's in the dam, because as long as there's water in the channel, we can release that through the channel. But we also are using 3 siphons to get even more water out of the lake. And the siphon systems, here you can see them. And you can already see that the water level is here about 2 meters below high water level as well. On the left, you can see the staff is working over the siphons actually towards the high point. And these siphons are running subsequently towards, I think, 150 feet or something below the dam that's where they're discharging, and that's the picture on the right. The installation was all done of these siphons, was primarily done by the use of a helicopter. So 60 feet length were just dropped in, sneaked in, and located next to each other by a helicopter there, which is an amazing job. So it's great skills, and SRD crew and helicopter staff worked 12-hour days to get this system in place. So a big thanks to our friends at Airspan for their support on this one. Without them, it wouldn't have been possible. So in terms of water conservation regulations, we're still seeing unauthorized use out there. We still are identifying on a daily basis people that are just having their sprinkler systems running at night or during the daytime, primarily on timers. We've had complaints about pressure washing over the weekend. Not one house, multiple houses. And we just can't have that at the moment. Our water supply is too dire to have that. So we definitely stepped up enforcement. Our enforcement personnel, staff here at the SRD are way more involved than they were before. And this is the number of fines and warnings to date. Warnings, we're not issuing warnings anymore. Any violation is immediately a fine. So the fine number will continue to rise as we speak. We sent out another significant amount of leak letters early this month, and there were a lot of them were resolved in August, and we expect that a lot of them were related to irrigation systems that were turned off because of the ban on outdoor watering at the end of August. We sent out several shut-off notifications several weeks ago, and they were all resolved, resulting in significant savings of water. And there are 5 currently out there, and I know that those are all business connections, so also large connections. So they have not that long to resolve those issues, those leaks, or they will be shut off as well. We currently have over 600 people that are receiving their monthly water use update, and we definitely continue to encourage residents to subscribe to that program. What are the challenges we're currently seeing? We don't have any rain in the forecast, at least not for the next week and a half, and as I indicated before, we might have to put Great Creek offline after first substantial rain. So if it happens to rain in a week and a half from now, it might result in us losing Great Creek. And it will take a substantial amount of days without any rain before we would be able to turn it on again. So most likely, if we have to take it offline, it's offline for the rest of the season. We also need a significant amount of rain to actually be able to say we're safe. Last several years, it was always we need about 100 millimeters of rain, and then we're good. But as I indicated, the watersheds are currently also by the province considered to be extremely dry, and I consider a watershed like a sponge. The sponge is currently extremely dry, so it's not. If we release water from the lakes, water is actually absorbed by the soil before it even gets to our treatment plant. So every 5 liters that we're currently releasing at the lakes, only 4 will make it to the bottom and get it so that we're able to take it into a treatment plant. 1 liter every 5 liters, 20% is just absorbed by the watershed. So if we were get rain, first that entire watershed, that entire sponge, upstream of the lakes as well as below the lakes, would need to be fully saturated before it starts releasing water again to groundwater and the lakes again. So we would need over 100 millimeters of rain. I'm thinking more around 100, 125, 150, before we can actually see a significant increase in our lake levels to the state where we can actually reduce our water restrictions. At the same time, with cooler mornings, I think this morning at my place it was 7 degrees. The lakes are at 1,200 meters. Usually every 100 meters there's a half degree temperature change. So 1,200 meters is that it was freezing out there last night. These siphons have never been tested in these kind of conditions, so we hope that they continue to work when it starts freezing there overnight, but we're not sure. And as indicated before, there are ongoing bylaw infractions, sprinkling, pressure washing, and all other kind of use. So, Emergency Operations Center, we've been active since September 29. What are we focusing on? One thing I would like to mention on top is that there is an extreme well collaboration between local governments and the Sea Shield Nation on the staff level, as well as on the elected level, but also on the staff level in terms of, and a good example is the collaboration with the town of Gibsons. That's something that is really essential, I think, to where we are right now. We've definitely increased our communication along several media outlets. I think the major TV and radio stations have been covered, and local media have been actively spreading our messages as well, which is very beneficial. We're doing in-person visits to residential properties and with high water use. And we've done mail-outs to all business owners on the coast. I think the list to date is 480 businesses received a letter from us, the larger one last week and the rest this week, to encourage them to do their share in terms of water conservation. We definitely also stepped up again our legal resolution efforts on the residential side and the commercial and the business side. We are working with the hospital to make sure that they have a contingency plan in place. Since last Saturday, the campfire ban is reinstated in the region. We don't want to have fire departments using a lot of water for campfires that can be prevented. It's just not the time for that, unfortunately. And we've done an outreach campaign in collaboration with the school district. That resulted in all parents on the coast receiving this flyer in their email box last Friday. This flyer provides targeted, easy to implement recommendations for parents, any homeowner, what they can do in their house to reduce their consumption. Showering time, don't rush to flush. Use your washer and dishwasher only at full loads, and reuse water inside the house where you can. Water your plants. And altogether, it can save us a lot of water. Currently, the average is about 400 liters a day, but I know that there are residents out there that are coming along, families that are coming along with 150. And that's an amazing effort. And in that perspective, it's very unfortunate that there are still residents sprinkling their lawns and using more than 1,000 liters a day. So what are we working on in terms of solutions for next steps? Because I indicated we have a guaranteed water supply until early November. So I think given the weather forecast, and the amount of rain we need to have and to be on the safe side of things, I think additional steps will be required, and I will provide an overview of what we are currently working on as an EUC. We've put in a request to the province for a reduction of our environmental flow need at Chapman Creek. We are currently releasing 200 liters a second to support fish and the aquatic life in the lower reach of Chapman Creek. And Supported by a recommendation from our biologist, we requested a reduction to 160 liters a second. That would give us a significant amount of additional water to provide to the community. Province is currently considering this request and committed to come back to me with a response by the end of the week. That would allow this to be implemented very shortly, and the longer this is in place, the longer we can benefit from it. Every 2.5 days that we would have this in place, this reduction, it would give us an extra day of water supply in the end. We've identified options to even further improve the siphon system at Edwards Lake, and we can currently make that because, as I indicated, the water levels are dropping significantly, and which leaves certain parts of the existing dam exposed that we now can move the siphons to. So we can relocate some of the siphons to those lower parts in the dam, and that would allow us to access more water in the lake. And that additional volume is already permitted, so we don't need an additional permit for that. There is definitely still water use in the community that is not considered, given the circumstances, that could not be considered essential. And we are definitely considering to implement additional water restrictions on non-essential use. We can't do that. We're out of means under our current bylaws to do that, so it would require the declaration of state of emergency, local emergency, and in order under that so to for us to limit further non-essential use. We are working with the contractors fiercely, I would say, and we're receiving great support from them as well as other agencies to find a way we can use our Church Road well field, the infrastructure that's currently in place in the more and the current state of affairs is that as of 10 minutes before this meeting started, that it looks like that we have a technical solution to at least get 20 to 30 liters a second extra out of this well field into our system. By doing some interim plumbing, installing a pump that was delivered to site earlier this week. We have a generator in Delta that we need to get to, that need to be tested and be brought in. BC Hydro is really helping us and is willing to prioritize everything they need to do to get this system up and running. So decision needs to be made shortly if we're going ahead and make those temporary adjustments and plumbing, and that would allow us to use the well field in the upcoming weeks. There is an opportunity to improve our siphon system at Chapman Lake a bit, but there will be significant technical challenges with doing so. We're working with VCH to confirm what is needed to use Trout Lake. Again, Trout Lake used to be a water source. Since it has been taken offline, some of the infrastructure that was used is reused actually currently as part of the system from Chapman Lake. The water in Trout Lake, we will be able to chlorinate it, but we won't be able to take away the brown color as well as any sediments or taste, because it will have a very organic taste. So we're currently working with Vancouver Coast Health to confirm what is actually required to use that source. It would be able to provide water from the Red Roofs area up to Secret Cove, and that would account for 2.5 to 3% of our total water supply. So it doesn't make a significant difference, but if every drop counts, this is definitely one. We have designs in place to install pumps in Chapman Lake because as you could see in the pictures, the siphons are running out of length, where the water levels are such that we might not have additional capacity to take water from siphons. And we have a design in place to put pumps, generators, and fuel storage in Chapman Lake, actually along the shore / lake bed, to get more water out of it. It's an option that's, for us, considered the last resort, and also by some of the regulators, primarily because it will create a lot of noise. You would have generators running in a provincial park, and staff, I encountered elk, wolf tracks. There's all kind of wildlife there, so the impacts to those species would be definitely need to be considered. So it's a technical option. It's not cheap, but it can be done, and it will have environmental impact and risk, because you have fuel next to our primary water source. Even though the containments will be double walled, etc., etc., there's still, if something goes sideways, there is a risk. We also explore trucking water from water sources on the coast, like Langdale or even some of the Pender areas. It's not a solution to provide the entire water coast with water, but it could provide certain areas with some water, or it could provide water to, in an emergency situation, to community points where we can have a truck where people can go to, or it can, let's say, directly get water to care homes, hospitals, and those kind of facilities that we have really targeted use. There are just, in terms of logistics, there are just not enough trucks in the Lower Mainland that can transport potable water for the amount of water that's required for the community. So the top three are the initiatives that we're currently are really focused on, that we're, which is the reduction of fish flows, as indicated. Request has been made to the ministry and anticipated decision in today or tomorrow. Modifications of siphon system at Edwards Lake is, in our opinion, the least risky and the highest chance to provide us with a significant amount of water, and we anticipate it could provide us with 2.5 weeks of additional water supply. So that would be significant. And we're considering to declare a state of local emergency, and subsequently impose further restrictions on non-essential water use in the community. All the other options are continuing to be explored to the point that we can pull the trigger to implement them when we decide that's required. And that might really depend on when the rain falls, when it, if the other solutions, what the impact of those are, and yeah, also in some cases the technical and the permitting required for them. So our ask to the community: the extreme drought is not going away anytime soon. Please continue to do everything you can to reduce your water use. We need it. And we ask the community to stay informed. Our website, YouTube, Facebook. In 2 weeks, there's another board meeting. I'll do another water supply update like this at that point in time. And our local media, follow the Coast Reporter, follow Coast FM radio. We provide them with the latest updates, and they provided their support to us to get the message out as soon as possible. So thank you for your efforts to reduce your use. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We have Director Beamish.
Yes, thank you for the update. You mentioned at one point that there's the potential for Chapman Lake to freeze over time to time. I imagine overnight and then daytime thaw. But when does the snowfall? What's typical for, say, Dakota Ridge or other areas? Because that then doesn't become rain. That becomes snow laying on the ground and not melting into the Chapman to recharge the Chapman Lake. What's the risk of our running out of runway on that and finding that, yeah, we're going to have precipitation, but it's not going to be precipitation that can be used until spring. It's next year's water supply.
Thank you for the question. It is a risk that's out there. While, and on that point, while I just mentioned that the water, there's a 100% chance that the temperatures in the next month, and there's a chance, still a higher likelihood that they will be above normal for the months after. From a drought perspective, actually, short term it's not good, long term it is good, because it might mean that the snow will hold off a little bit longer up in the watershed, and it will, any precipitation will fall as rain or at least melt.
Is there a chance that the Chapman wouldn't fully recover before that happens?
It totally depends on the snow. I can't look in the crystal ball, but the chance is there. So that's the reason why we're exploring all the other options, including what we can do with Church Road in the meantime. Because if we are not, it could mean that we don't have a full lake at the start of the season.
Thank you. Director Pratt. Sorry, we can't hear you.
Now,
Yes, now we can.
no, yeah, now you can. Okay. It's the headphones, so we'll just get rid of those. A couple of, I have a comment from a constituent as well as a question from a constituent that was sent to me. So first the comment, we had a brief conversation prior to this meeting, and I'd like to just say thank you. This is particularly a constituent that is actually is doing all they can and was really frustrated, and then got informed by another constituent about what was going on. So wanted to send me a thank you, and wants to have another conversation about water later. But just I think the amount of information that we're pushing out is great, because this is a very complicated issue, and it's been exacerbated by years, and we're finally seeing what can really happen, and we're so close to that. To go on to the question though, the Local Government Act does allow for ticketing up to $1,000. Is there a way that we can change our bylaw fine from 500 to 1,000?
Thank you. Staff are currently exploring options to increase our enforcement, and including the effectiveness of it, and changing fines is part of that discussion.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Yes, I was wondering if you could give me some examples of non-essential uses that are under consideration for banning. Thank you.
I'm not able to provide you with a full list, but items that we are considering is production of alcoholic beverages. There might be production of cement, concrete, asphalt. Those kind of things are definitely on the list.
Thank you. Director Lee.
I was trying to remember which button here. The dropping the creek flow to below 200 liters a second, If the 200 liters a second is not enough for the fish to come up the creek anyway, is it? They actually wait for rainfall before they enter the creek. So I take it that the 200 liters a second is to keep the little guys that are in there already healthy. Do I have that right, or have I got that wrong?
Thank you for the question. 200 liters a second is usually indeed not sufficient to really create the big migration. We are currently seeing, and that's what's happening all along the coast, is that the fish are holding outside. They are not coming in at all. Usually 200 liters a second is indeed required for the juveniles that are still in the creek. However, during the summer, the temperatures, the water temperatures are also higher because it's outside, it's higher, and there's more sun exposure than currently. So the oxygen levels are currently higher in the water, even if it would be reduced to 160 liters a second, because the temperatures are just lower, and so that's the combination. What we are going to do is, if we're going to drop it to 160, we will have daily monitoring during high tides of the creek to see if there's adults coming in. The moment adult fish are coming in, we will increase it to 200 liters a second, because we don't want to have salmon stranding.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. All right, my turn. So you talked about identifying businesses or commercial operations and sending out letters and requesting that they reduce their water use. Given there are no business licenses in the SCRD, how are you identifying them? Or are you just looking at, do they have commercial water meters? Okay. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. It's a combination of commercial water meters and because those are where we have a lot of those, and otherwise knowing that they exist.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
You took my question.
Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're 5 meters below the top of the dam at Chapman Lake, and I think Chapman Lake's 35 meters deep. So there is potential there then. I've got that right?
Yes, there is potential there, and but as I indicated, we might have an opportunity to adjust our siphon systems at Chapman to access a little bit more water, but there is a huge technical risk there, and the other option is pumping. And so yes, there is water, same as Edwards, there is water, but from the options, modifying the siphon system at Edwards, given that we have a license and there's less risk there, we see that as far preferred options over installing pumps at Chapman. But we have a design ready for a reason.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Yes, I'm wondering if you could explain for public consumption why declare a state of emergency, and what does that allow us to do that we can't do without a state of emergency?
Thank you for the question. A state of emergency allows the local government to put in restrictions, orders, request the community to do things, prohibit things that you're not allowed to do under your current bylaw. So it would provide us with additional powers, in this case, a mean to further restrict certain water users. And if required over time, it also other users might be a benefit to have. And one of those is that it allows us to, one of the things it also allows our staff to do is to access private property. And there's a benefit there from an enforcement perspective as well.
Follow up, are you good? Very good. All right. Any other questions or comments? I don't see any other hands up. No other questions. All right. Thank you very much for that one. And I think we're moving on to item number 4. Item number 4, 2022 drought response update and financial implications. We've already received the report, so we'll turn this back over to you again.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is this report outlines the options we just discussed in terms of additional water supply sources and outlines the financial implications. So we anticipate that based on discussions we're having with Emergency Management BC, there are definitely costs that already occurred or that we're proposing to occur in the upcoming weeks that will be covered by them, but it still would require us to include them in a financial plan upfront. So in total, we anticipate that another $200,000 budget is required to implement the siphon system at Edwards to modify that and to initiate any other action that is required in upcoming weeks. And that includes additional monitoring for environmental flow need and also staff time, which was not included in the previous budget request. So we're currently asking for another $200,000 from operating reserves for regional water, with the anticipation that a significant amount of that will be reimbursed by Emergency Management BC over time. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Okay, I have one question right up front. So if we would not have set up the Emergency Operations Center, would any of the expenditures we're putting out be allowable basically by Emergency Management BC for reimbursement?
No. In the EOC need to be struck before that to happen.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
I noticed that the recommendations specifically mention the Edwards Lake siphon, but there's no specific mention around the Church Road well field. So am I to take it that we have enough money in Church Road right now to pay any immediate expenses and worry about it later? Is that where we're at?
Thank you for the question, and I can clarify that. Initially, there was funding approved for specifically the siphon system at Edwards. What we're currently proposing is to roll that money into a different project title, 2022 drought response, and add the $200,000 to it so that we have a total of $550,000 to do everything that's required and not list specific project, because some projects might be more expensive and others less expensive. So instead of doing a lot of in and out and accounting, the current recommendations to make it one big pot. And I have to say that some of the expenditures for Church Road are actually coming out of Church Road project, while that should come out of the project are coming out of the project. The specific work that might be undertaken to allow for the interim setup, those will be covered through these funds and most likely also covered by EMBC.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to page 8C, number 6, Trout Lake commissioning. I actually was at lunch today, and when I left, I had somebody in the parking lot say, why aren't you commissioning Trout Lake now? Why aren't you putting it on board? And one of the things that I had read in here was that once we do that, it may require a boil water advisory, right? Which would be then for the whole system or only for Half Moon Bay and up to Secret Cove? And then what happens if we bring Church Road on site? Does that also require boil water, and for who?
Thank you. The Trout Lake would provide water to the Half Moon Bay Red Roof area as well as up to Secret Cove, and only for that area would be isolated. Only a boil water advisory would be in place for that area. Reed Road, we're still working out the details and also have a discussion with Vancouver Coast Health. It looks like we can chlorinate the water and because it's groundwater, most likely the water quality is such that if chlorinated, we can provide it to the community without any further boil water advisory in place.
That's amazing, because that would be the whole Chapman system.
Yes.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments on the report? I don't see any. I think sorry, Director Beamish?
Not on the report, but just question, is Town of Gibson's vote on this?
Corporate Officer?
Thank you for the question. Yes, this would be all directors, weighted vote. It's an amendment to the financial plan.
Thank you. And Director McMahon?
I would like to move the recommendations on page 8A.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded, all right. So as it's a weighted vote, this would be all directors voting, A2, B2, D2, E2, Town of Gibson's 3, District of Sechelt 6, and SIGD 1. All those in favor of the recommendations on the floor? Thank you very much. Thank you for the work you're doing. Please extend our thanks and acknowledgement to your staff who are putting in all this time. We do appreciate it.
Thank you. I will.
Thank you. Moving on to number 5, this is Committee of the Whole recommendations numbers 2 through 5, 7 and 8 of September 22nd. Recommendations 1, 6, and 9 previously adopted. Director, is there any of these recommendations you'd like to pull for separate consideration? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion to adopt. Moved. Seconded. All in favor? Thank you. And then we're moving on to item number 6, Cooper's Green Hall Replacement Project Construction Update from our General Manager of Community Services. So we're just waiting for them to get settled, so patience. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Chair, members of the committee. I want to thank you for the opportunity to bring this report forward on the Cooper's Green Hall construction project. We recognize that our normal course of action is that we present our reports to committee prior to board. And so coming direct to board is a little bit out of the ordinary. However, there are some reasons that we've done this. If the board will remember, on July 14th, staff presented a verbal update on some preliminary findings from a geotechnical report that was related to the Cooper's Green Park site. And at that time, we committed to coming back to the board once the actual report had been received. The report was received the end of August, but due to some staff illness, we were unable to present in September. Also, as the report indicates, there are time pressures on this project, one of which is the ICIP grant deadline. Other time pressures include unprecedented supply chain delays, escalation costs going up, and the uncertainty in the construction industry. Time is of the essence for this project, and we didn't want to delay any further. Given the meeting schedule in October, due to the election, there were limited opportunities, so thus we're in front of you today. So I thank you for that. As the report indicates, the geotechnical review recommendations have been received and suggest a different flood construction level than what was previously considered. The current design of the hall does not accommodate this elevation difference. In order to realize the construction of a community hall and a gathering space for the residents of the Half Moon Bay community within a reasonable time frame that meets the criteria outlined in the ICIP grant, that can be accomplished prior to the grant program conclusion, staff has considered options. It is possible to conduct a more detailed flood hazards study specific to the area. Further investigation and design work by professionals would clarify requirements, mitigation strategies, associated risks, and any additional costs, which would help establish a clearer understanding to make an informed decision on the viability of the Coopers Green Park site. It is also possible to explore other sites. And these sites may not have some of the site challenges that the Coopers Green Park site has, but that being said, there are advantages and disadvantages to all the locations. Staff had done their best to outline the options in the report. We are seeking board direction on how to proceed, and both Manager Doyle and I are here today to answer questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for directors, prior to this meeting, we were sent an email indicating the voting on this matter, just so I want you to be aware. It is going to be a weighted vote. So A2, B2, D2, E2, Town of Gibson's 3, District of Sechelt 6, and SIGD 1. All right, directors. Director Pratt.
Thank you, Chair. So I guess, this is, it's a complicated issue, and it's further complicated by the timing of where we are right now in the certain situation that we have with the rural areas. Because frankly, and I've expressed this when we did agenda review too, is I'm very uncomfortable with having this in front of us at this time, especially as the rural areas, which will be covering any of the costs. Area B is the only one that is going to have an election this fall, and I am I'm the one that's very certainly not going to be at the table after to answer to the community and make the decision on this. I know staff had a concern about having it delayed too much because of the election. So what I would like to ask is if it is possible, and the board would need to weigh in on this as well, if this be deferred to a special board meeting on November the 10th after the inaugural board meeting. And that way, that gives all of the rural directors who are coming up and all the other directors plenty of time to review, because 4 of the 5 rural directors know who they are. We only have 2 incumbents that are continuing in this area. And if we have this deferred to the special meeting, then the newly elected Area B rep would be able to weigh in. And I know I've spoken with the Area B candidates. I've spoken with the Half Moon Bay Community Association. And I think there's a lot of good knowledge about this coming forward. I'm really uncomfortable voting on this at this time, just due to the timing.
Thank you. Just to clarify, when do we actually have after the 27th, when do we actually have our next board meeting?
Thank you for the question. The first board meeting of the new board, the newly elected board, will be November 10th, and that will be the inaugural meeting. And at that meeting, the directors will take their oath of office, and we will elect a chair. And then the board will be in a position to conduct business. But my concern with deferring this item to November 10th is that the agenda typically goes out the week before, and I'm not confident that the municipalities will have appointed their regional directors by that time, and they will need to receive an agenda package and review all the specifics on the item. So I would encourage the board to consider a later date if they are considering deferring it.
Thank you. And then the follow-up to that would be to our GM. If we do defer it to that date, I think what you've indicated is that it could impact basically getting the project done within the time frame.
Thank you. And certainly that is the question of the day, right? I've had conversations with the granting body about the possibility of an extension, which certainly exists. But at this point, until I actually put in a formal request, it's not a given. The grant program deadline is also a deadline that we need to be aware of, because it's the deadline for anybody with an ISIP grant. Now, the granting body will be considering that deadline next year, whether it's going to stay in place or not. But these are all uncertain. So we're trying to balance the knowledge that we could potentially get a year extension, maybe more, but no guarantee, with the knowledge around how long we think it's going to actually take to construct, assuming we don't hit snags with archaeological work, the construction industry. So we're trying to balance all these. So I think that's why we feel a sense of urgency. But at the same time, we recognize this is a very important decision. And I always hate to be driven by time with decisions. I'd rather make decisions based on good information, solid information, which is one of the reasons the options are in front of you, is to equip us with better knowledge in order to inform the decision, because those options will also take time, and we acknowledge that. We do think what we've presented today in terms of a time frame is achievable, but it does push the boundary on the deadlines. And I know that was a roundabout, maybe non-answer, but I feel it's the best I can give you at this point in time. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's a good non-answer to a non-question, because I had to make a statement, so that was good. Director McMahon and then Director Beamish.
Thank you. I appreciate that staff has done the prudent thing, bringing this report forward at this time. I favor deferring the decision on this because of all of the reasons that Director Pratt stated. I also have considerable concerns about escalating costs, because as you just saw, we are spending a lot of money on water, which is non-optional. And we are facing a lot of very large costs in a lot of areas, including garbage, fire protection, emergency services, and, you know, facing a collective agreement that I can guarantee is going to be more costly than our current collective agreement. So this is, in fact, a big decision, and I'll be happier to look at it in November, probably not at the inaugural meeting. That's a kind of a tough way to start out. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Beamish.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would ask the corporate officer, can you give a date as to what that first meeting that was reasonable to discuss this? Is it the 24th?
Correct. Currently, that is what we have scheduled on the calendar, but that doesn't mean we cannot schedule a special meeting between the 10th and the 24th, should we decide.
As the outgoing mayor of Gibson's, I did vote against this project when it came up, just to the overwhelming costs, which continue to escalate for the project, and this doesn't even anticipate the outcome of the archaeological review. I would prefer that the new mayor of Gibson's weigh in on this as opposed to me. I know my vote will be, it doesn't count for much, given it's a weighted vote, but nevertheless, it is important, I believe, that the new mayor have a chance to consider what his position would be on behalf of Gibson's. I would make a motion then to defer until the 24th of November for consideration of this matter.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded, thank you. Director Hiltz?
Thanks, Chair. I guess I'm on the other side of the fence. This board has a lot of current experience around it, and the next board will have a chance to change its recommendation if they don't like it. So my perspective.
Not if it's implemented.
There are considerations, but I think there is a way to back out of it in the next term. But I'm not. So I would like the discussion to continue on the options that are here before we defer it. So maybe there's something in here that we can agree upon that will take this board and move its experience into the next term. Because we have been, don't kick it to the next term, right? We've been trying to do this. So I would like to give it a go today, to try to figure out something that we can use our experience now and move it forward. Thanks.
Point of order, Chair,
Yes.
is a
I was just gonna go
motion
there.
to defer is not debatable.
Yes. So no more speakers on this. The motion is on the floor. The vote will be as a weighted vote? Thank you. No, there's no debate on a deferral. Sorry. I should not have allowed the other speakers. You cannot speak. Sorry, you cannot speak to a deferral. Procedural. Thank you. Corporate
Thank you,
Officer?
Chair. Just to confirm, so this vote is a matter of board business, will just be a straight corporate vote, all directors, one vote each, in terms of deferring the item.
Thank you. So not a weighted vote. Directors, one vote each. Thank you. So the motion that's on the floor is to defer this to November 24th board meeting. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. That carries. Right. We will move on to the next item.
Chair?
Yes,
Just
thank you.
record my vote, please.
Okay, yes. Would anybody else like their vote recorded? Okay, Director Lee. All right. Yes.
I'd like to confirm Director Hiltz and Director Lee on the record as opposed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 7, CIR Reconciliation Movement Project Support.
Thank you, Chair. This particular report just provides some options related to providing funding support for the CII Reconciliation Movement for 2022. We have encouraged the movement to apply for a grant, Rural Areas Grant and Aid for 2023. So I'm happy to take any questions if the board may have some on some of the options presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Directors? Director Lee.
Yes, I'd like clarification on your earlier ruling. My suggestion was that we change the date of the deferral, not that we voted on the deferral. I wanted it at or before the 24th. Could I have a ruling from?
Corporate Officer?
Chair, you may bring that matter back for reconsideration. Anyone who voted on the side in favor of the motion may bring it back for reconsideration, if you wish to do so right now.
Director Lee did not
No.
do that, but I voted in favor. So what you're saying is I can bring it back for
Correct.
reconsideration, but
Correct.
only not for the deferral, but for the date?
You can bring back the motion for deferral in its entirety. You would have to bring it back in its entirety,
Thank you.
and then we would vote on it again.
All right. So, and it's not a motion. Sorry.
Point of order on or just a clarification then for the corporate officer. Can we make an amendment on a deferral to change the date, or would we have to defeat it and then make a date change?
Thank you for the question. No, you've already adopted the resolution, so it is passed. But the chair who voted on the prevailing side may bring it back to the floor for reconsideration, and then any member can make a new motion, and the board would vote on that.
So what you're saying is once I bring it back for reconsideration, it's actually not on the floor.
The recommendation is on the floor. You're bringing it back for reconsideration.
So then we would have to vote on that one, or can we make an amendment to it before we vote on it?
You can make an amendment to it before you vote on it.
Thank you. All right. Do Directors McMahon, and okay, that's gone. Director Hiltz? Okay, so I would like to bring the motion back for reconsideration. And then directors. I'm going to look to Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to make a motion of deferral, but at or before the 24th.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Okay, and those opposed? Okay, so we've got one opposed, and you'd like that recorded? Thank you. All right, I think we're done with this one. All right, move on to item number 7. Let's try this again. This is the CIO Reconciliation Movement Project Support. It has been introduced, and I know that there were some questions. Who would like to speak to this or ask questions on this one? Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. A comment. Let me get to my page. I'm going, option one looks like a doable thing, and the suggestion would be five grand, and we kick in whatever we can, and, you know, Area A might need a little bit of assistance, but, well, they put in what they can. But that seems to be the easiest solution, and I'd be prepared to put in Area F. I think a fifth might be somewhere around the $1,200 range, I guess, out of Area F as under option one.
Thank you. Director McMahon. Area F, 1,200, okay.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I'm willing to do this. I'm just kind of frustrated with our limited options. We seem to be coming up against a lot of special or one-time requests that we don't have a way to fund, and it's frustrating. It's annoying. I'm not wild about having CIA have to apply to us for grant and aid, because I'm assuming that they will have to do that even if we pre-approve the money at this meeting. So I would really like I'd like to urge staff to find some way that's better than this, that we can handle these relatively small items. Even if we, I don't know, have to set up something with, you know, budget limitations on it to allow us to vote money for small projects in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Ties.
Yes, thank you. If I remember the report correctly, isn't there a stipulation that it has to be a registered society to get to $5,000? And in that case, are we only eligible to give $500 to this organization? I really want to support CII because they're doing a wonderful work, but isn't there that technicality? So just clarifying that one.
Tina?
Yes, I think as staff are evaluating the funding options, of course, with the regional district model, there is some limitations. I think that you have a grant and aid policy for the rural areas, and Director Ties is correct in saying that unless they're a registered society, the policy does say that it's limited to 500. Staff then explored further, because this is quite a unique movement, and I think it's a unique situation in that this is really also fosters our commitment to reconciliation as a local government, and could be, I think, a very, very logical factor would be government relations. And although this is not a government initiative, this is a people's initiative, for sure, this definitely does foster that amongst the local, for the regional districts. So I find it's very different than a typical community initiative through, say, some of the cultural kind of community or art community in the organization. It's not really a festival or something driven out of a community group. This is something quite different. So I guess that's how I see it. So back to Director McMahon's point as well. We are limited with the regional district, and hence why there is on the books to explore social service function, because as a regional district, we have to have a service to provide funding. And the only avenue otherwise would be through the Grants of Assistance program, of which there is a policy. So I offered those two options in this particular report. So each one, it can be considered. And to Director Ty's point too, we wouldn't be, that's why I'm recommending that we provide the funding directly to the Seychelles Nation, because then we're not providing it right to the movement, and they were okay with that.
Thank you. So just point out, option 1 is funded by rural areas. Option 2 is funded by everyone. All areas. Director McMahon?
Well, so would they have to apply, or can we just vote the money to them from our grant and aid today?
I would say that they have done a modified application through their delegation and through the information that they've provided you. So that's why we thought that to go through an additional step of doing that was probably not prudent, but that's why we did encourage that going forward, because this is an ongoing initiative, that they continue to apply through the granted aid. And they seem to be amenable to that because they have different projects each year, and they'll have different ones next year as they do for this year.
Thank you. Director McMahon, anything further? Yeah.
Sure. In that case, I am happy to contribute $1,250 from Area E.
Thank you. Director Ties?
Yeah, considering the constraints for Area A, I'll chip in 2,500 from Area D.
Thank you. Area A?
I wish I'd left more money, but you can have my $4.
Thank you. Director Pratt?
You can have my 1243.
Okay, so that sounds like you've added that up with the 1,250, the 2,500, the 1,200, 1,243, and $4. That's not quite 5,000. We're short $3.
I think I have another $3.
Okay, so that would be
That might change.
1,250, 1,253 from Area E. Can we confirm we are at 5,000? Tina?
Yeah, so if the 4 rural areas, less Area A, wanted to contribute, the $5,000 will be $1,250 for each area. So Area D wouldn't have to contribute that additional amount because it would just be the 4 areas participating. If Area A wanted to contribute, then we could reduce that to $1,249 and have him contribute his $4.
Okay, directors, do you want to stay with the numbers that you've put forward, or do you want to modify those? Director McMahon?
I believe Area B is $7 short.
I am.
All right, now what numbers would you like us to use? All right, so Tina, so you're saying 1,249 each would do it, plus the $4 from Area A?
Well, you're correct. Area B, I think, is a little bit short. So I think we can, you know what we can do is we can just take it offline and just make each area contribute equally amongst the contributions.
So recommendation would be that the rural areas will fund $5,000 from grant and aid with amounts to be determined.
Yes, with amounts to be allocated evenly amongst what's allowable or what's eligible within discretionary funds.
Thank you.
Tara and I can figure it out.
All right. So would someone like to make that recommendation? Moved, seconded. Any other questions or comments? Well, this will be rural areas voting only. All those in favor? Passed. Thank you very much. Thank you. You guys are great to work with. All right, moving on to Annex E. Annex E, number 8, pages 26 through 30. This is Natural Infrastructure Fund, and it's grant application for parks. And is Kevin Clarkson? Okay, go ahead, GM.
Thank you. I want to take a minute to explain this report because, again, it's a little unorthodox in the sequencing. It's never a dull moment with community services. Earlier this year, the board approved a project budget to remediate the damage that was sustained at Chapman Lake Campground during the flood event last November. The board also approved a consulting budget for both the Chester pedestrian bridge as well as the Cliff Gilker Park damages, and that was to hire a consultant to develop options for not only recovering the infrastructure lost at these locations, but also the consideration of mitigation strategies to reduce future risks. During Q2 of this year, staff we needed to wait till we got contact with our provincial representative from recovery funding, from the disaster recovery funding group. And so we were able to work with them during Q2 to determine eligible costs recovery that might be received for the various park infrastructure. And we have since, I think it was early August, we did receive confirmation of some recovery funding for a couple of projects. Mahan Trail received a small amount, Catherine Lake Campground also received a small amount, and Seaview Cemetery. The remaining projects, however, we have not received a decision on recovery funding for those projects to date. But as per our commitment to the board back in January, is we would also continue to seek alternative funds, because we had the board commit reserve funds in order to fund 100% of the costs for those projects. And so we've continued to do so. So we had a short turnaround time with a grant called the Natural Infrastructure Grant, and we applied for that grant for 3 projects, Catherine Lake, Cliff Gilker, and Chester Park, because they fit the eligibility requirements. The grant application for Catherine Lake was reflective of the budget that the board already approved for the project in its entirety, whereas the application for Cliff Gilker and Chester Park actually was an application for the project in its entirety without an approved budget from the board. So it was more of a grant for something that could be, should the board approve that project in the future. So to be clear today, the board is not being asked to approve the budget of the project. They're asked to be approved the application for the grant. And in the event that we're successful in getting the grant, then we would need to come back to the board with what our options are, what the project budget might look like in order to seek approval for the project budget and therefore acceptance of the grant. So it's a little unorthodox in its sequencing. We still are continuing to procure our consultants for the projects Cliff Gilker and Chester Park in order to put that plan together. But staff used their expertise to be able to project what a budget might look like should we proceed with the projects in their entirety. So a little bit convoluted, but today, to just clarify again, you're being asked to support the actual application, which is enabling staff to try and pursue other sources of funding in order to help offset the impact to a potential taxpayer cost. So I'm here to answer questions, as well as Manager Pro if you have any questions that I can answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Director McMahon.
Yes, well, I'm always in favor of asking for money. However, I'm still feeling very frustrated that we are not allowed to use the gas tax funds that we are sitting on for what is essentially climate adaptation and mitigation work. And I'm wondering if we should write to UBCM and ask them to broaden the projects that qualify for gas tax funding, because this is one of our most urgent needs right now. And we're not able to meet it, even though we have money in hand. That's one thing, and the other thing is in regard to Chester Park. I'm wondering, because after all of this dry weather, there is a very real possibility that we'll have heavy rains, and we'll start having exactly this scenario happen again. Are staff looking at sandbagging Chester House to prevent it from flooding this fall? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take the second question first, and then we'll go to Tina with the gas tax funds piece.
Thank you. I will take that back to staff. I'm not sure what mitigation tactics they're planning for potential floods or atmospheric river or, climate implications this fall, but I will definitely take that back to staff. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tina, about the gas tax funds. My question on that is it UBCM that makes that determination, or is it the federal government?
Well, UBCM administers the federal agreement, and so the federal agreement is actually up for renewal. So definitely get your points into UBCM because they're negotiating that currently. As far as just clarifying too what's eligible and not eligible, there may be aspects in the future iteration of what we want to do from a mitigation strategy. Gas tax wasn't eligible for the repairs and maintenance to basically deal with the response and do some of the repairs because it was repairs and maintenance. So if we do something to enhance, that might be that likely would be eligible. So I think that's where we have to frame what the next steps are, because of course what we've dealt with right now is like for like. And so that wasn't eligible. But if we go to something more enhanced and, you know, move trails around or do something completely different, then I think that would be definitely in the range of being eligible with UBCM's gas tax program.
Thank you. Director Ties, and we'll come back to that UBCM question in a second.
Yeah, thank you. I'm suspecting if we want to do a UBCM motion, this will be separate from what we're discussing right now. And so I'm happy to remove the recommendations as stated on page 26.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the recommendations on the floor? Director McMahon? Sorry, there's a delay on my computer here, so, okay. So this is voting all directors. All those in favor? Thank you. And then can we revisit that conversation around enhancements? When I look at this on page 26, these recommendations, it talks about flood resiliency project. I'm assuming that that is enhancements to what is there to help with something happening in the future, so that it's not the same. Is that correct, or are we just repairing what's there?
So when we were working with our provincial rep, it was about replacement around recovery funds. As this grant is related, it's actually resiliency as well. So, and when we're working with our consultants on the two parks, Chester and Cliff Gilker, we're looking at remediation options as well. So yes, should a trail be moved? Should the bridge be replaced here, or should we replace it somewhere else where it's at less risk? Certainly with Chester, we're looking at the creek and what what we need to do in order to try and mitigate future issues with the creek. Do we need to change it, and so we're getting engineers involved. So we're formulating the plan. We don't have the plan yet, but that would include not just like for like, but also mitigation strategies that the board could choose to enact when we actually get to the point of approving the project. Hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Director McMahon?
Yes, I don't believe this would be a UBCM resolution. This would simply be a letter that we could write to UBCM pointing out, you know, the needs that we are feeling at this time and the need to be a little more flexible with this infrastructure funding, especially for regional districts, because we have such a lack of flexibility built in. If we make a motion right now to write a letter, are we good to go? Does staff have a pretty good idea of what should be in the letter? Do we need any more direction?
Tina, go ahead.
Yeah, I would maybe add, and Tara and I can definitely take this on, but I would build something related to climate resiliency, because I don't see that very much reflected in the current gas tax agreement, but I think that it's now in our face. And so, yeah, I would build something a little bit more robust and it might not be related to infrastructure. And I think that's where the current plan really does focus on capital assets. And sometimes climate resiliency may or may not generate an asset. So I don't know if you want to take it to that next step. There are some planning related types of things that can be approved within gas tax, but it then has to manifest to a capital asset. So I think that's where there's some of these nuances that I think need to be reviewed. I don't know if this is something we want to bring back to the board for consideration. And I know the timing is a little bit interesting here, but we do have the gas tax report on the October 27th, the funds update on the October 27th board meeting. So we could potentially bring a draft letter for consideration to that particular meeting.
I'm getting nods. So would you like us to make a recommendation that staff bring a draft letter and to UBCM regarding gas tax funds and climate resiliency applications.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because I'd like to engage other staff, especially our sustainability staff and planning. And I mean, I think we just need staff to maybe have an opportunity to give some feedback, and hopefully we can turn that around in the time frame. It could be a report to follow.
Thank you. Would someone like to make that recommendation? Director McMahon, and it's seconded. Any other questions or comments? Director McMahon?
We might mention natural assets in there as well, but great idea. Thank you very much.
Seeing no other hands up, all those in favor? Thank you. Moving on to item number 9, Dakota Ridge Volunteer Group Update, Annex F, pages 31 through 33. Go ahead, GM.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. I actually just wanted to take an opportunity to introduce Ms. Jessica Huntington. Jess is with our Parks Department. She's our Parks Planning and Community Development Coordinator. Say that 5 times really fast. But Jess is here to present the report, but I just wanted the opportunity for an introduction because I believe this is her first time in front of the board. So thank you.
Yes, thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much. So I'm here just to answer questions in regards to my staff report in regards to providing information about the possibility of exploring a partnership agreement with the Dakota Ridge Recreation Society. I believe you've all had an opportunity to review the report. And basically, just to summarize it, I've had the pleasure of working with the Dakota Ridge Recreation Society, which was formerly known as the Dakota Ridge Recreation Group, and to explore possibilities for them to enhance the Dakota Ridge service through discussions with the group around what they might see as their contribution to enhancing the Dakota Ridge service, and also outlining the terms and conditions that the SCRD would expect met in order to enter into a partnership agreement with the group. We came to the conclusion that at this point in time, the Dakota Ridge Recreation Society will not be pursuing a partnership agreement with the SCRD. Instead, we'll just be working on ways that we can work collaboratively and improve communication between SCRD Parks Department and the volunteer group to enhance the service at this point in time. The door is still open in the future to pursue a partnership agreement if they're willing to engage in meeting the terms and conditions outlined by the SCRD for the partnership agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Directors, any questions? Director McMahon?
Yeah, this is a pretty frustrating situation that we have basically gone ashore on the reef of insurance costs. I'm not sure how much money is involved. My guess would be a few $1,000s for insurance. And having talked further with the group, their feeling is that the other groups that have contracts with us or do this kind of work, such as the Tetrahedron Club and the Coast Mountain Bike Group, are already established groups that fund a lot of other activities, such as, recreational activities, fun stuff, things like that. And so they have a base of money to draw from members. But in this case, the group only formulated itself in the hopes of providing a service for the SCRD, and they don't really want to be paying to volunteer. And I do see their point, but I really wish we could come up with some sort of out-of-the-box solution to this one, because otherwise they're ready to go. We could really use their help, and it's just as frustrating as anything that the insurance requirement is knocking this off track. So I don't know if anybody else has any bright ideas, because I'm pretty aggravated at the moment.
Thank you. Director Lee?
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually looking for some clarification. What we have is a group of volunteers that would like to take on a specific function and get it done. And I don't know why we would need a partnership agreement for that. We would just need agreement between the group and our staff that they can go ahead and do that work as volunteers to us, for us. And they'd be covered, I understand. And yet if we sign a partnership agreement, they're not covered. I don't know what good a partnership agreement would actually do us, except that they couldn't walk halfway through the job. I guess that's about it, though.
If I may, I would like an opportunity perhaps to explain a little bit better. So we already have a relationship where the group has a number of people that are involved in it that volunteer on the Hill and do parts of, they do some trail grooming, they do hosting, and so that relationship will continue. What was originally envisioned by the group was actually taking that over and taking responsibility for all the volunteers, getting all the volunteers signed up and taking on. So right now we have our volunteers do applications, do criminal record checks. We have a very thorough orientation that we have to go through with them. We get documentation. That's all part of our requirements around ensuring volunteers. So that would be transferred over to the group with the same level of responsibility in order to, if they wanted to take on that holistically, and they wanted total autonomy and authority in that respect, which is very different than it is right now. We have the authority and responsibility for that. So if they wanted to take that on, it was a very different level of responsibility that they were wanting to do, which then would be an agreement with us. And in order to enter into agreement with us, they needed to be a body that we could enter into an agreement with, which also comes with insurance requirements. And so no different than Sarah Ray Hall, Pender Harbor Living Heritage Society, and some of the groups that we have that take over responsibility from an authority and autonomy perspective. So they recognized that they were new and just out the gate. They had some very interesting ideas at the beginning in terms of how they were going to raise funds, et cetera. And I think when they took a different look at it, they decided that that was just not, they didn't want to spend money on insurance. And I understand that. But that means then that the responsibility and liability comes back to us, which means we still need to get all the stuff from the volunteers, and we need a greater level of involvement. So the way we see it right now, they originally thought they could get insurance through RST, Recreation Sites and Trails BC. But in order to do that, it's them that has to hold the agreement with Recreation Sites and Trails BC. And it's us that holds the agreement right now. And it's us that had the support from the nations as well to hold the agreement. So I just think what they originally envisioned to pursue is just not really what it ended up being. So the relationship, from what I understand, will continue to be involved. They're just not going to have the authority and autonomy over that relationship. There were other pieces that they were very interested in taking over, which we just can't accommodate. We have very expensive equipment up there, and we need to hold the liability around that equipment, so we have to have a measure of authority around that equipment. So there were areas that we couldn't explore at this time, is certainly outside of a formal agreement. So when and if they get to a point as a society, they're feeling more robust, they've thought of different ways that perhaps they want to create the sustainability, then we can explore it. We talked about an intern perhaps being covered under us for a year, but it's not a precedent that we wanted to set to have groups covered under our insurance, because we have a lot of groups that we have relationships with that are required to provide their own insurance. So it's just a little bit more detail to suggest the relationship's going to continue, just not in a formal way.
Thank you. That explains it quite well. I just basically just put it in my mind. They want to be a contractor for us, and I have to have all the right stuff to do it. So thank you.
So that begs the question, are they covered now under anything? Or is it their own personal liability should something happen up there?
So right now, as a society, I don't believe they've gone after any insurance from officer and board liability insurance. But we're not doing anything with the society. We will engage volunteers the same way that we engage volunteers. Whether they're members of the society or not is irrelevant to me, because I will cover our volunteers.
Right, so currently volunteers are covered under our.
That is correct.
Insurance policy, okay. That's the piece I was missing. All right, directors, any other questions or comments on this report? Seeing none, let's move on to, now, first of all, before we move on, we're moving into the area of GM Rosenboom. Do we need a break? We've been here for a few hours. How long would you like? 5 minutes? Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you. Thank you and welcome back to the Sunshine Coast Regional District regular board meeting of Thursday, October 13th. We're moving on to item number 9, Annex F, pages 31 through 33. And this is with regards to the Annex G, number 10. I forgot to check off number 9. Annex G, pages 34 and 35. It is the mattress recycling contract extension. GM Rosenboom.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek board approval for the extension of our contract with our mattress recycler for an additional year at a value of $87,000 and somewhat dollars. Thank you.
Short and sweet. Directors, any questions or comments? Director McMahon?
I thought we had a tipping fee for mattresses that covers this, so this is a budget item that will be recouped?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Mattresses are indeed, there's a tipping fee for it. Overall, they are covered through all the tipping fees we collect. I'm not sure if there's 100% of the revenue or from the tipping fees are 100% covering the cost, but a large portion of it, yes.
Thank you. Director Beaman?
Yeah, I can recycle a mattress in Gibson's at the Gibson's Recycling Depot, which I plan to do next week. Now that, they don't go from there to the landfill, do they? Those mattresses?
As far as I'm aware, not. But I
Okay.
don't know where they are going.
Yeah, so I'd just be interested to know how many mattresses they take out of the system that don't have to be recycled through the regional district, because I don't know how many they're recycling from that location, but I know that I can drop mine off there. It'll be a queen-size box spring mattress if anybody wants one. Yeah, so it'd be interesting to know what service that level is providing, because this seems awfully expensive for the contract.
So I think what you're asking is, does this amount also cover the mattresses that are being dropped off in Gibson's under this contract?
Which I know I'm going to pay for.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to the question at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Lee?
Is there going to be an extended manufacturer responsibility deal on these mattresses? Is that in the future at all?
Thank you for the question. That's an excellent question for the province, because they are setting up those kind of programs. And at the moment, there is none.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Director McMahon?
I'd like to move the recommendations on page 35, is it? 34. 34.
Thank you. Seconded? Thank you. All right, any other questions or comments on the recommendations on the floor? All those in favor? Thank you. Now we're on to item number 11, Metal Container Hauling and Recycling Services Contract Extension, Annex H, pages 36 and to 38. And again, GM Rosenboom.
Thank you again, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek board approval for the extension of our contract with Salish Environmental Group for one additional year on our contract for them for the hauling of our metal from our disposal locations to the processor. We are, given that we're going to participate in the MAR program, the Major Appliances Roundtable Recycling Program, we are expecting an uptake in the amount of metal that will be disposed of at the landfill. And that's in part why for a third year we're asking for, and we're anticipating a higher volume than in previous years. And the report also noted that staff are working to increase the compaction level in our bins. So currently we noticed that with the new drop-off area in place, there was less metal put in a container, and those containers are of course hauled to Vancouver. So the more you can put in a container, the more cost efficient it is. So we're working with our own landfill operator as well as with the hauling contractor to explore ways we can get increased compaction of our bins so that there is more cost efficient hauling happening.
Director
Happy to
Lee?
answer any questions.
Yep, thank you.
I believe that if I've read it correctly, I just wanted to confirm my understanding. Staff's going to tell us by the end of the year whether we're making or losing money on the $150 tipping fee. Do I have that right?
Yeah, we haven't started the MORC program yet, but indeed by the end of the year we will know if there's a net not a net revenue on this service or not. Last year there was, as indicated in the report, there was about 216,000 we received from metal recycler on top of the tipping fee. So last year there was a positive outcome, and by the end of the year we will know more about how that went this year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Beamish?
Yeah, similar to the last question, I guess that I'm seeing that some of the things that are provided through the regional district at either the landfill or, in this case, Sailor Soils or Pender Harbor, are provided locally in Gibson's as well. Yet there doesn't seem to be a relationship with the SCRD for that. Like I drop all my metals off at Bypass Auto, and they just have a bin, and I can throw that in the bin, and most everybody I know drops their metals at Bypass Auto. Yet there's no relationship with Bypass Auto and the SCRD. It's a service. The big part of that service is that it saves additional trips between Seashell and Gibson's in terms of driving, where we could drop it off. Yes, we pay for it there too, but it's be interesting to explore that in the future, is to see whether or not we shouldn't be doing something down at the lower coast end of the coast in terms of partnerships with some of the services that are being provided and being used by residents down there.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the remark. I think that's an excellent topic to be considered in the update to the solid waste management plan that we've started, because that really looks at what are the services the SCRD is currently providing, what other services are being provided on the coast, and how can there be more synergies between those services.
Thank you. Director Ties?
Yeah, as an add-on to that, I drop my metal at Bypass Auto and it's free, and here we are paying a lot. And so, is there a way that maybe the SCRD can collaborate with Bypass Auto and just shunt everything they collect to Bypass Auto, and then they'll take care of it? They may be interested in more volume, and then we don't have to pay as much for hauling. So these are some thoughts that should be considered.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? There are some recommendations on page 36. What would you like to do? Director Hilt?
Sure, I'll move the recommendations as presented on page 36.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded. All right. All those in favor? Any opposed? Would you like that recorded?
Yeah, please. I think that the cost just keeps on going up for these services, and as I say, I don't use them. Most of the people I know don't use some of these services because we are able to do it. We have alternative services that we use, sort of thing that we just don't seem to be. I never see any of these costs come down, so I'm going to register my vote. Thank you.
Thank you. I think one of the conversations that we need to have at some point is an actual service review for the whole solid waste, organics, recycling on the Sunshine Coast. And I think that staff have been tasked with a number of big projects and a number of EOCs, et cetera. So it hasn't been something that's been actioned at this point. But I think that is a conversation that they've been having as well. It's been happening behind the scenes and between the governments. All right, moving on to item number 12, Annex I, pages 39 and 40. This is the Pender Harbor Transfer Station Engineering Services Contract Amendment. And again, back to our GM Rosenboom.
Thank you again. The purpose of this report is to amend our contract with XCG to do design work for the site upgrades required at our Pender Harbor Transfer Station. The budget for that was approved as part of the 2022 budget process. So this is just the contract amendment to actually have XCG do the design work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments or moving the recommendations? Director Lee?
I'd like to move that we accept the recommendations as listed on page 39.
Thank you. And is there a seconder for that? Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you very much. We've already received the communications, and that item has been dealt with. We'll move on to bylaws, number 13. And I think we have a bit of an introduction to this.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief introduction to say that staff are prepared to support implementation of the new bylaw. We have a transition plan in place that's coordinated between building, planning, and our mapping team. I'm ready to take the next step if that's the direction that the board sets. Thank you.
Thank you. And I need to find the page for the actual, do we have the page number for the actual bylaw? 41? I went right past it. Yeah, but I'm looking for the actual bylaw. Yes. Yes, it starts there, but where's the actual, acts, etc.? The readings. It's not there. I know it's in here somewhere. I just don't have the page number bookmarked. Hang on, I'll just whip through here quickly. Yes, go right ahead.
I just want to thank staff and also the community for their part in the public hearing. I went back and listened to the public hearing, and I also want to thank Tim Howard for doing his part in moving this forward. And a big thank you to staff for really listening to the input from the public hearing and being responsive. And I think we've come up with a better solution than what was in place before the public hearing. So thank you to everyone. And I was loath to miss it, but I did have a good time on my rafting trip. So I'm not that upset. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, we found it. Page 186 is what we're looking for. So I'll let you get there. All right, does everybody have page 186? So this is before us for third reading and adoption. Voting is electoral area directors only, 1 vote each. So we are looking at Sunshine Coast Regional District Zoning Bylaw number 722, 2022, before us for third reading. Would someone like to move third reading? Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And then Sunshine Coast Regional District Zoning Bylaw number 722, 2022, for adoption. And I'd look for someone to move adoption. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you, staff. Thank you, the community. Thank you for engaging with us. Thank you to the board for being responsive to the community. I think it's made a difference. As Director Tighe indicated, the feedback that we got at the public hearing was incorporated, and I think the community is pretty happy with the product that we came out with. So thank you for that. We're going to move on to directors' reports. And maybe we'll start online. Well, maybe we'll start here, because Director Paul has not been with us before, so he can kind of hear what we do and what we say, and then he can jump in. So we'll start with Director Hiltz at the end of the table here.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple things. October 5th, the Sunshine Coast Labor Council asked me to come and talk to them about the last 4 years and what the next 4 years might be about. On October 11th, the West House Sound Community Association hosted a all candidates, and that was for the school trustees for local or trustee electoral area, as TEAs as they're called, and there's 4. They all showed up. That was terrific. And just I'm going to put in a pitch for the Fire Prevention Week as a great opportunity to vote and go out and visit your fire department after you've cast your ballot. It's in Gibson's. It's going to be Saturday 11 to 2, I believe. So learn about fire. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Beamish.
Yeah, thank you very much. Our last council meeting was on October the 4th, so we've been having a fairly quiet time since then. Yesterday we did have a policing advisory committee meeting. It was good because we actually met at the RCMPD sub-detachment office in Gibson's, had a tour of that building. The committee is interested in moving forward in the next year and still preparing for the 5,000 population. It was a big part of the initiative of that committee, and so that but also crime prevention and other activities in the community. So they're a very committed group, and we're pleased to see that they'll be carried on under the new administration. We also have, at our last meeting, we recognized 4 of our community members for their outstanding work on behalf of the community over time. Pam Robertson, Conchita Harding, Ed Hill, and Donna Thomas all got recognized, and it was really a very good event. And I encourage everybody to take time to thank people in their community who are doing things that generally go unrecognized, and they don't look for recognition. But it is interesting. I had a contact from one of them since that, saying just a bit of publicity that I gave has encouraged other people to reach out to her and to ask her to be somewhat of a mentor to them, or have discussions with them coming forward as to how they can work with council and how they can better advise council without being making an aggressive or an antagonistic approach. And so if that's the result of reaching out and thanking people, then that's positive for us. I will be leaving the coast on the 25th of October. The next meeting, the 27th, unfortunately, I'll be in transit. I'll be on a ferry going from Prince Rupert to Haida Gwaii. So David Kroll, the Deputy Mayor, will be here present at the next meeting. So thank you all for your support, for working together the last 4 years. It's been interesting, and I wish you all the best for the future. Those of you who are, I guess if you're not running for council, you're all re-elected, so that, yeah, good on you. And but enjoy your time for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's been a pleasure working with you over the last 4 years as well. It's been some tough times, and not always, but I mean, I can remember those COVID meetings we were having 3 times a week, and so there's, yeah, I think it was. I mean, COVID was difficult, but I think actually it brought us closer because we had to work together, right? We had to work together. So I think the coast benefited from that. So thanks for that. Okay, Director McMahon.
Right. Well, I've been attending or listening in on a lot of all candidates meetings lately. It seems like a very odd election for some reason, but of course, it's a strange position to be in, to be acclaimed when other people are running. Although it's really nice not to have to put signs on people's lawns. So I was at the Scredo board meeting on Tuesday night, and this is just a reminder that they are looking for new board members, and there's an application process available on their website. So you might pass that around. Also a reminder to vote for the school board if you are in an area that has been acclaimed. The school board are still running. They're going door to door being asked about water, poor people. But there they are. The most exciting thing I did recently was on Monday, I hiked up into the tetrahedron and visited Edwards Lake and Chapman Lake and saw the siphons at Chapman Lake, which are really impressive to see firsthand and see how they work. It's also very impressive and disturbing to see how dry it is up in the subalpine areas right now. The other thing that was really interesting to me is that where the trail crosses Chapman Creek, where it's running, because of course we're siphoning water into it, and you can smell the difference in the air, just having that water in the environment. You can smell it, you can see not just the vegetation, there's mushrooms. There's mushrooms nowhere else, but there's mushrooms near the creek, and there's a small unnamed lake that's just below Chapman Lake that's fed by that creek, and it's full, and the whole area is so different. It really brings, you really start to appreciate how the impacts of the drought on the environment. And, you know, we really are in different times now. So, and thank you to staff. I mean, the water staff in particularly are just, you know, working round the clock to try and keep our water going. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, I feel a little bit rusty because it's been almost 2 months, I think, since I've been here. But it's great to be back for a last hurrah, and then on the 27th we have our very last meeting, I guess. And I'd like to thank Tim Howard for very ably replacing me. He's definitely a great person to have in my back pocket when need be. And thank you to Tim and Donna for catching me up when I got back. We were able to meet and have a chat. And so I feel like I got caught up on all the things that happened while I was gone, which were numerous. A lot happened. And so with that said, I don't have too much to add at this point. I will be meeting with Kelly Bax and Candace Woods this coming Tuesday to do a bit of a handover meeting, and so they will be. I'll try to bring them up to speed as much as I can and as much as they're willing. So, and of course, I will also be available to any other candidates if they wish to contact me. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Lee?
I'm going to keep this quite short because not having to put signs up and attend meetings and make funny little speeches, it's given me quite a bit of time. I did make some use of the time. I did a bunch of research and made summary events from 2015 to 2022 and the Chapman water evolution, so it was quite interesting. You know, you think you know it all until you start looking at the details, and it's quite surprising. So if anybody wants some crib notes, just let me know and I'll send them to them. Very happy to see Councillor and SCRD Director Paul here. We've got a seat right next to me here so we can chat. Hopefully you'll be making that soon. Anyways, that's my report, nice and short. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Pratt.
Thank you, Chair. So first off, Mayor Beamish, Director Beamish, thank you. I just, you know, it was great to work with you. I'm wishing you all the best in your new adventure and safe travels as you go up there. I mean, we've had a lot of adventures too when I was chair, and including in the back of the police car, if you don't remember, back of the police car and the airplane rides. So we're going to miss you, and thank you for all of the work for the town of Gibson's. Well, all of your contributions to the Sunshine Coast over a few years, you know, just a few. So thank you so much, Bill, and wishing you all the best, and please keep in touch. Otherwise, my director's report, I've been having a lot of conversations with community members, everything from water to Cooper's Green and a number of other things. And also really enjoying the conversations I've been having with the candidates for Area B. We have two very well-informed candidates, so Half Moon Bay is going to be well represented. So I'm looking forward to seeing who the successful candidate is. Wishing them both luck. Wishing everyone luck who is running on Saturday. I mean, I've already shed enough tears over not being able to run, but anyways, I'm really really intrigued. It's going to be an interesting one, and wishing you all the best and good luck on Saturday. And Donna and Len can just kind of sit back a little bit and and just watch as everybody else does this little final push with door knocking. And yes, please do not forget to vote for your school trustees. Schools are really important to the fabric of our society, and one of the ways that you can shape that is by voting for a school trustee that you believe in. So other than that, that's all I've got.
All right, I'll do my report. Typically, I go at the end, but I'll do my report and then we'll go to Director Paul. So I was lucky enough to come down with COVID a few weeks ago. So I was isolated at home, and during that also took part in online forums. So it's been, during the election, it's a lot of work, but it also requires that we go back and review all the documents and all the policies, including our 200 and some page official community plan, in detail, because we get a lot of questions about all of the various documents. So it's a lot of work, because you get a short period of time. You have to be very succinct in answering questions. I mean, the one we did last night, we had 5 questions. There were 17 of us, and each of us had 1 minute and 15 seconds to answer a very detailed question. The question was like a half page long. We had 1 minute and 15 seconds. So no extraneous words, nothing. And you time yourself. And so it's a lot of work for prep. But again, it's really good to actually have to dive back into all the documents in such detail. I did have a meeting with Ministry of Transportation staff as a follow-up to our meeting from UBCM that happened last Thursday. And they are going to be looking to reach out to the government staff at this point, not the elected officials, given where we're at in the election cycle, but they will be reaching out to staff at both the Regional District, Town of Gibson's, Sechelt Nation, and District of Sechelt to go over budgets. They're in the process of putting their budget together for the province for the 1-year funding that they have, but they'll also look at the 5-year plan. And they recognize that we're in budget cycle as well now. Good opportunity to get together. So expect that to come. If we don't hear something in the next week or two, I'm still in this chair. Give me a call and I will phone them and make sure that happens. Inclusion Fest. I attended Inclusion Fest just very briefly yesterday. That's Sunshine Coast Association for Community Living. Brings together special needs clients on the coast, families, etc. And they have a potluck supper. Chief Cragen actually did an intro, and he talked a bit about giving when he grew up and what his life was like, and how his grandchildren don't believe that he lived the way he lived. So it was quite interesting to hear some of that when he talked about the fact that they had cedar planks that they'd have on the bottom of their houses, and they would actually pick them up and tie them together and put them behind the canoe and take them to the next house and then lay them out. He said, I learned how to pluck ducks. And he said, I hated plucking ducks. But I realized after that I was plucking the ducks and the feathers actually made my bed. They were in my pillow, they were in my coverings and stuff. So, and then I had to pack them up and take them with me to the next village, the next place we were going. So he spoke for about half an hour, and there were a lot of bits and pieces in there. And I've said a few times, his grandchildren do not believe that he lived the way he lived. So it was quite interesting. Sechelt Arts Festival starts tonight. So the grand opening actually is at 6 o'clock tonight. So I'll be going from here to there. Sorry, 6 o'clock? Maybe it's 5 o'clock. I think it's 5 o'clock. So I'll be going straight from here to there. get out and check out the facilities. There are free events, all kinds of workshops, etc. They do a really good job. Get out and check them out. And it's called upsizing or something, or updating. It's how do you recycle in art. Upcycling, okay. Zoning bylaw 580 with the District of Sechelt was adopted as well this past week. So we have the regional district and the District of Sechelt both with new zoning bylaws. So that's pretty cool. That work is done. What else have I got? Active transportation network improvements. So we are doing some active transportation in the District of Sechelt. We're putting bikes and walking trails going up Mason Road, past the West Sechelt Elementary School, through from Mason over to beside the golf course, and then up to Kinnickinnick, like Kinnickinnick Park, and down to Kinnickinnick School, right? So it's a whole piece. And we already are doing some other work by Kinnickinnick to take it to the top of Trail. We're missing a piece from Trail to about ebb tide, or Surf Circle, sorry, missing that piece for funding. But otherwise, we'll have a complete circle route with bike paths and walking trails. It's awesome. It's a nice spine, basically, for this, and it's feeding into our active transportation network and our master transportation plan in the District of Sechelt. The project's being divided up into 3 phases. So it's going to start Mason Road from Highway 101 to Reeves Road. And that will actually, it's something that the West Sechelt Community Association has been asking for many years, because there are ditches along the road on Mason, and kids are walking to school. So this will make it much safer for the children who are going to school there. That'll be tendered this fall, so watch for that. Snicket Park Washroom. The archaeological investigation is completed. We're waiting for the site alteration permit to be issued by the province, and then we will be putting in a public washroom at Snicket Park. It's on, it's right at the end of the new development that's going to go up across from the Justice Services building. Right down there, there will be a washroom, a public washroom, tied into sewer and everything else. What else we got here? The RV Sani Station is happening concurrently with the operations building. The off-site civil works are being done right now. And Inlet Avenue road improvement. So we got a grant to do work on Inlet Avenue, add sidewalks on the side opposite the post office, right? Because it's been angle parking there. We got a grant for that. I think we're putting in a little bit of money, but most of it's covered off by the grant. The archaeological work has been done. We're waiting for the archaeological permits. You'll notice that there's been pavement marking in Sechelt. You actually have crosswalks and you have lines on the road. So check it out. Looks good. Final thing, election this Saturday. So I just encourage everybody to get out and vote. We have quite a slate in Sechelt. There are 13 running for council and 4 running for mayor. So get out and vote. Encourage your neighbors, your friends, your family to get out and vote. Last time our turnout was about 48%. We're hoping to beat that this time. I think Gibson's beat us last time. We got to beat Gibson's. All right. Director Paul, over to you. Okay, and you'll have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, well, this is pretty interesting to meet everybody close to this end of this term or whatever. I don't know if most of you know, I just started as a counselor here in May, so it's been a pretty big learning experience from this end, and then try to get caught up with the work that you guys do. And it's been pretty interesting with all the technical glitches and difficulties with this Surface laptop, but so you guys probably know there was the Reconciliation Day stuff and then the self-government stuff that happened recently for us over here on this end, and it was good to see the community turnouts, and those crosswalks are pretty amazing. We've been having to deal with some stuff on this side along the lines that obviously the SCRD has to deal with too, so it's a pretty big learning experience. Our election is in February, so I'll be on here until then and then figure out how that goes. But it's very eye-opening. It is very eye-opening. It's very, very different to see from a community perspective, to get a look behind the curtains here, that all the work that everybody does here and how it's not very appreciated. So, and you see that across all different levels of government and stuff. And so just wanted to thank you guys for your work. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. So hopefully, whoever's still here, hopefully I can just get in-person stuff. We'll be a little bit less hectic here and be able to come to the meetings in person and start talking to you guys on the side stuff. And see, what I found through this so far is that there's not too many differences in what we believe in or what we want and what we want to accomplish. So it's good to see, and it's very, very heartening to see. And it's I think there's a lot of common ground that we can go forward with. So I think it's awesome. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we have, we're requesting to go in camera under section 91 F, G, I, and K of the Community Charter. So I'd look for someone to move that motion, that recommendation. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And then, sorry? Did you want to make a motion? Do we want to make a motion to have Christine? I forget your last name. Alexander, right. Christine Alexander stay with us as we go in camera.
Yes.
Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. All right, we have Director Pratt. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Before we actually go in camera, are there any questions from the gallery? Well, there's an online gallery as well. Yeah. Okay, I don't see any hands up. If you have any questions for us, please put your hands up. If not, we will let you go and we will go into our in-camera portion. All right. All right. Thank you, Connie and Leanne. We'll let you exit the meeting.
You and your cookies. You're not sharing.
welcome back to the Sunshine Coast Regional District Board meeting of October 13th. I'd look for a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Good night.
Bye. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.